Good morning, and once again, this is Una Daly, the Community College Outreach Director at the OpenCourseWare Consortium, and welcome to our second webinar in our spring series from the Community College Consortium of Open Educational Resources. And today's topic is the critical role of librarians in OER adoptions. And we have actually 4 wonderful presenters this morning. And I think you're going to be very interested in the projects that they are working on at their colleges. We have Angela Seacrest from the Houston Community College District, who is the Director of Library Services there. We have Sheila Afnan-Mans and Candy Mickelson, who are faculty librarians in the Maricopa Community College District in Arizona. And we have Shireen Dabu from Southern Seattle Community College, who is also a faculty librarian. And just a few technical issues before we get started. You should see on the left-hand side of your screen a participants list, and hopefully you're turning up in there, which means that you're on the computer with us. And either directly above or below, you'll see a chat window, and that chat window will allow you to participate in this conversation, enter questions if you have for the presenters as we go along. For the most part, we will save the questions for the end, but do feel free to type those into the chat window as we go, and we'll try and answer them. And if we don't, we'll pick them back up at the end. And at the end, we'll have the opportunity for those who might be speaking live on a microphone or telephone to also ask questions. One thing I want to mention is if you are on the phone today but don't have a presenting role and it's noisy in your area, I'd ask that you do the *6 on the, which mutes your phone, only if you're not a presenter. I think that's all we need to take care of on the technical side. All right. If you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, please do so in the chat window. Once again, that will be on the left-hand side of your window, and you can type right into that blank screen and go ahead and hit enter, and it'll appear to all of us. Tell us what college you're with, and maybe what your interest might be in OER. I have to say we have about 78 people with us this morning, so it would be great to hear where you're all from. And now I'm going to actually give you the opportunity to pick up one of the icons, which is between your left-hand column with our participants and our main window with the slides in it. And if you pick up that star, which is the second icon in the list of icons, you can actually pick one of those and you can drop it. Okay, thank you. A lot of you have done this before. It looks like we're primarily in North America today. Wow, but oh my, all right. We've got a lot on the West Coast. We've got some East Coast folks, and we've got a few in the center. Well, great. As you know, the OpenCourseWare Consortium, our parent organization, is a worldwide organization. We do occasionally get folks from across the globe. However, the timing doesn't always work out for them. And these are all archived. So if you have colleagues who couldn't join us today, this will be posted on our website by the end of the week. All right. Our agenda today, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the Community College Consortium, and then we're on to our projects, OER in the library at Houston Community College District. Second, we will hear from the librarians at the Maricopa Community College District about empowering students with OER. And this is a topic that doesn't get enough play, I think, and so both Sheila and Candy will have some very interesting things to tell us about their project. And finally, we will hear about curating OER and integrating information literacy into the open course library, and we'll hear from Shireen in the Seattle Community Colleges about that. All right. Our mission at the Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources is promoting adoption of OER to enhance teaching and learning. And we support professional development for faculty. These monthly webinars are part of that. We also offer faculty development to colleges in other ways. We often do this at conferences. Sometimes we do this regionally. Contact us if you're getting started and need some help with that. Currently, we have over 150 member colleges in the Open Courseware Consortium. These are community and technical colleges, and right now, as you can see, we're primarily in North America. We've got Canada recently joined us, which we're very pleased. The British Columbia province joined us, and you can see we're spreading throughout the United States. We're always looking for more folks, and particularly, we'd like to have a little bit more representation in the Midwest. All right, now on to our topic today. I think we all know that librarians can play a natural role in helping with the discovery of open educational resources. As we know, even today, where open educational resources have really expanded a great deal over the last few years, it can be difficult to find high-quality resources. And librarians are search experts, and so they bring these skills to the job. Information literacy is obviously a large part of their role at the colleges, and we're going to hear in particular today about two faculty librarians who are working with students to improve information literacy, but using OER to do so. And finally, they are curators of educational content. And what better skill than that but to bring to adoption of OER in our classrooms. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our first presenter. This is Angela Sechrest. She's the Houston Community College District Director of Library Services and also a longtime member of the Community College Consortium Advisory Board. She has been an advocate for open access learning and open educational resources for a long time, dating back to the ARPANET days, when students and faculty alike contributed learning resources and other stuff freely to each other. And Angela believes that OER could change the world if we could just help more people to find and use them. And that is what she is doing at the Houston Community College District.
Hello, can you hear me okay now?
Angela?
Great, okay. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I don't think we have any good evening people here right now. I'm so glad that we're having a program on library activities. Libraries, after all, have been providing free access for centuries. So it's kind of a natural thing for us to continue doing that. I would say, however, that among all the librarians I know, perceptions of OER pretty much parallel faculty perceptions for now. Many still perceive commercial publications to be of higher quality and value for all the reasons we've discussed here before, while others are a lot more open to evaluating, using, and promoting OER. And I think the numbers in the first group are pretty much dwindling. We'll just have to keep plugging along until we have a lot more converts, I think. I've spoken here before about, there we go. Okay, I've spoken here before about the HCC initiatives. Our library initiatives so far are a bit more informal, as are our faculty-led initiatives, probably for the reasons I just stated. HCC has been developing new initiatives to support adoption and development of OER since about 2007. We had board initiatives and policies which require that HCC lower the cost of textbooks to students and strongly suggest the use of free and open resources as alternatives. The Instruction Division promotes OER within the copyright and intellectual property procedures and with textbook adoption procedures, which are becoming more OER friendly. We're also promoting them through our model courses, and I hope that one of these days Laura will talk to the group about that. Laura Goff and I here at HCC committed to conducting OER advocate workshops as part of our original participation in college open textbooks after we met Jackie Hood at Connections years ago. I can't even remember when that was, but that's what started it all here. We've seen successful faculty-led initiatives by Ken Busby, who has published a gazillion Connections modules. I know there's a real count, I just don't know what it is, for compilation into textbooks, and by Carol Lehman, who recently spoke to CCC OER about her paper on improving student outcomes by using an open textbook in the HCC psychology department. She even took that show on the road to e-learning a couple weeks ago too. We're really proud of Carol. Our STEM faculty actively search for OER and open access materials to promote active collaborative learning in the sciences at HCC as part of our quality enhancement plan. And for those of you who don't know what that is, our accreditation body, the Southern Association, requires a 5-year quality enhancement plan as part of the accreditation requirement. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to survey faculty concerning OER adoption and use this year, and that survey will of course improve librarians. And with our emphasis on student success, we're even seeing increased interest in the use of MOOCs for college prep courses. So I think we're gaining momentum. Of course, HCC librarians participate in the effort, but we're most involved in activities that integrate OER with our other resources and services. Our strongest skill is providing assistance with access and discovery. And as an outcome of several discussions with our Innovative Resources Working Group of the Textbook Committee, we discussed creation of an OER portal, a perfect job for librarians. I'll describe a few features of that portal, which, keep in mind, is a work in progress and always will be. One thing we've done is, librarians of course are really good at providing self-serve resources and then helping people to use those resources. And that's basically what our LibGuides are all about. We try to supplement other initiatives, and we focus on access and discoverability. And we're hoping that the portal will be a one-stop shop someday, but it probably won't be. One of the first things we did was to integrate an OER search into our internet search page. Several years ago, following a discussion at Connections about the need for a widget, I came back and made a little thingy right here. As you can see, I repurposed that code several times over for other types of resources as well. Our QEP director wanted an interface that would allow faculty to input their favorite, most useful OER and other modular resources into a website or LibGuide. So I wrote an interface for them to use, and they used the staff side of the interface, and this is a picture of the staff side, to input the information for each module. And this information goes into a database and is searchable by the public in real time. It's completely customized according to their criteria. And the QEP faculty and the director especially have a huge notebook of printouts and websites, which is not very accessible. And they're going to start putting those sites into this interface so that they can provide a searchable access point for anyone who wants to use them. And yeah, that means even all of you actually. It will be public. This is a picture of the public input screen, or the public search screen, and it's very simple. I forgot to include a display screen. Sorry about that. This little screen can also be embedded in the LMS or anywhere else. We use Moodle Rooms here. It's just a simple list of resources with options, or we also provide a list of resources, a browsable list. And the public display has browse lists for each of the QAP subjects for pedagogy and for resources for keeping girls and women interested in science, which is one of our special interests, I would say. We recently licensed the LibGuides product. Most of you are probably familiar with it and use it. And that's what we're using for our OER portal. We like that we can embed and integrate just about anything fairly easily. Most of our librarians are buying into LibGuides more than they did our old open source research guide software, and it probably helps that we use it for a lot of other things, including our database access. As far as the portal goes, we're trying to promote OER only to HCC faculty, but I've had requests to use this guide as a template, and of course I said yes, in the spirit of OER. And I recently put a note to that effect on the guide. People can just grab it if they want it. We're trying to use the guide to answer basic faculty questions up front and of course in a familiar format. The how box, or the what box for example, includes our standard definitions, and we have a how box purposed to answer all those nagging and burning questions faculty have about pedagogy and practice. Only a little of this box displays, but it does include UNESCO and Commonwealth of Learning and lots of other resources. Judy's resources are listed in this box as well, for example. So it's a pretty extensive list. We've embedded the search box for those who'd rather discover modules themselves. LibGuides, this is a good screen to describe what LibGuides does also. It's organized by tabs across the top and boxes with different kinds of resources in each box. There's a form input for people who are actually creating the guides. It's very easy to use. And the displays, of course, are fairly standard. Everybody understands using tabs across the top of a page, for example. We're also creating boxes for subjects. Our subject guides each have boxes for OER, and those boxes are simply copied over or reused in this guide. And I've made OER part of the guide template. Of course, not everybody uses the template, but at least it reminds us all to look for OER when we create a LibGuide on any given subject, or to add OER to our LibGuide. Perhaps our greatest need right now is for free and open textbooks. So of course we've included a page for that. This is where I think we could be more proactive here at HCC if we could just figure out how to do it. We have committees. Of course, we proselytize every chance we can get, but it's still challenging to get more people to use open textbooks. And I've also included a page for free and open access materials, which are heavily used here at HCC and can always be used to complement both commercial and OER materials. These are recognizable sources, some of which are produced with public funding. They would be sources like PBS, for example. PBS provides a lot of free video on their website. Some of our most heavily used ebook and e-journal materials are not the ones we pay for. Directory of Open Access Journals and the Online Books page rank near the top of our database use. We actually run those statistics through our proxy server, so that's how we know that. And for those of you who do not know, the DOAJ, or the Directory of Open Access Journals, is a page of open access free scholarly journals. There are hundreds of journals there now. And of course, I guess I'm very interested in new models for scholarly publishing, and I'm thrilled to see so many universities providing the means for faculty to publish in these open access journals. We all win with open access publishing, just like we all win with OER. Well, unless your name's Taylor and Francis, I guess. I've also added a page for organizations, since organizations are so important for scholarship. They provide support and promotion, research, all sorts of services to faculty who belong to these organizations. And it's something they depend on. Oh, and that's it, the end. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Angela, for that broad view of all the things that not only the library at Houston Community College District is doing to promote OER, but also throughout the college. And you did end a little early, so if we have any questions, we can take some questions for Angela. We have a few minutes between presenters if needed. Angela, you were referring to the open access journals and other OER, which sometimes we don't necessarily think of as open educational resources, since they may or may not be used directly in the classroom. Did you want to talk a little bit about what happened last week with the Office of Technology and Science and Technology at the federal level?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, Una. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I sent it out on our list. I
bet I
was hoping you knew it.
And I bet I replied, and I forgot about it.
All of our agencies that are receiving over $100 million in R&D for research from the federal government are required now within 1 year of publication of their results to have a plan for publicizing the results back to the public. So this is part of the new open policy, not new, but gaining momentum open policy strategy where research that is funded by the public will be available to the public and won't be locked up in behind paid firewalls, if you will. You haven't heard about that? Well,
yes, I did.
I'll post that. You did hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll post that link to the chat window in a minute when I have a chance to. All right. Well, thank you very much, Angela. And Angela will be around at the end to take questions at that time. And I will now introduce our next presenters. All right. I'd like to introduce now Sheila Afton-Mans and Candy Mickelson. They are both faculty librarians within the Maricopa Community College District in Arizona, which is quite a large district, 10 colleges. And Sheila and Candy were working together at Paradise Valley Community College several years ago when they worked on the Medrano project. And the Medrano project was working in the classroom with Professor Medrano and his international business students. For that project, where they worked with students to curate OER and help students with information literacy skills, they received the Maricopa Diversity Advisory Council Award of 2012 and also the American Colleges Research Library CGCLS EBSCO Community College 2012 Learning Resources Award. And nationally they have presented this project at Locks in Ohio last year and also at the Sloan Consortium. And I believe they'll also be presenting on this project again at the AACC annual conference in April. So I'm going to let Sheila and Candy take it from here and tell you about working with students in adopting OER.
Thank you, Una, and thanks for inviting us to share today. I'm Candy Michelson, and with me is my great collaborator and librarian friend, Sheila Afton-Mans. Angela, I want to say thank you on a great presentation. We'll be looking forward to stealing from your LibGuide soon. Yes, we did help empower students through the use of OER, and Sheila and I are a little irreverent, so I'm going to play a little video clip real quick just before Sheila begins setting the background.
anybody with a $1,500 computer take images and sounds from the culture around us and remix them to express ideas and argue.
So based on that little comment from Laura Glesick, because he did lay a foundation in our work with our business faculty, Professor Medrano, because he says it's the life of our kids. They push for it, this digital creativity, they demand it. We can't kill this instinct for creativity, and we can't make them passive. And that was the whole goal of this project, was to remove the passivity at times of OER, of just pushing content, and let students become engaged with the content. So on that note, I'll let Sheila set the stage as the background for our project. So hello everybody, this is Sheila, and the project that we're going to talk about in a little more detail does have a background story. So before we launched this project, Candy and I were very excited and fully embraced our expertise in digital content, from proprietary to open access, which really stems from, our professional pedigree in information. In fact, while textbooks really dominate the discourse in community college and college discussion over OER, and rightfully so, because of the increasing cost of books for students, and this is something that as librarians we experience on the reference desk on a daily basis, where students desperately come to us searching for their textbooks and hoping that we'll have a copy on reserve or in the stacks for them. So it's something that we greatly empathize with, because we have that firsthand encounter all the time. However, I think because of our professional pedigree, we do think more broadly about the life cycle of digital information, the cyber infrastructures that are required to capture it, preserve it in a trusted way over time, and make it ever more available through good metadata. This is something that librarians have been involved with regardless of actually the format of information, but it becomes more interesting with digital content. And for the librarians in the crowd, we all know, for example, big projects like JSTOR, where we've been digitizing print-based journals. These are major efforts that release that content into digital format. However, that's a proprietary source. What's particularly exciting today is how university libraries are increasingly involved in capturing, using open source code to create repositories that will capture open data sets, journal articles or publications from their faculty. And we know more and more universities, like I think Harvard was one of the first, have created these mandates where faculty who publish are required to deposit a copy in the institutional repository. And then those will be made openly available, but also preserved over time. So this is all very exciting. And we're sort of on the cusp of probably a whole new world in access to information. However, at this moment in time, we do recognize that the majority of digital scholarship still does remain locked up behind proprietary databases. So Candy and I were interested in bringing our unique lens to the discourse of OER on our college through a service that we called One Click Digital. And that was, and you'll see on the slide, we sort of defined that as the technical and intellectual blending of proprietary and open access scholarly resources in a way that meets the course competencies, is copyright compliant, and feels free to the end user. So examples of this work that we did included workshops with faculty on how to create blended digital course packs that included both the open access and the proprietary. Working with individual faculty members to curate and identify content that they could use to either supplement or completely replace textbooks and other course materials that they had been using. And over the couple of years we were doing this, it really created a buzz. So by spring 2010, the business division, which actually did not have a strong relationship with the library at this time, but they had heard so much of the buzz from the work we've been doing, they approached us indicating that they really could use a open access business textbook for a program they were doing in the summer. However, there wasn't enough time to, we weren't able to identify one at that point, and there wasn't obviously time to create one from scratch. So while we weren't able to meet that immediate need, it did launch a very interesting discussion with the immediate professor, Reyes Medrano. And as we were talking with him over the course of the summer and into the next year, we realized, why should we be spending all this time curating the content for the students? In fact, if we provide the students with the information literacy and critical thinking skills, as well as strong search skills, they can actually curate this content for themselves. And that's where the big light bulb went off, that OER and open access and all digital content is not just a content, but it actually can be treated as an interactive pedagogy. So Candy will share a little bit about what our project looked like. So indeed, our students did become curators of that digital scholarly content. And part of that was the paradigm shift where students responded to course lectures, and this was very basic information that the professor would provide, not with just memorizing and regurgitating that back, but they would take that basic lecture and then curate and do additional in-depth and breadth research, evaluating and mixing relevant digital content, and created a living textbook. And I mean, you guys can read this, so I don't want to bore you, but I'd like you to hear what some of the students said. And we've run this now 3 different semesters, and the statements have been pretty much the same throughout. I'm going to grab a little link to share with you, because as we know, most students would say that a textbook is not their favorite thing to be engaged with. Oops, shoot. Yep, I'm having problems. So in addition, so after the students, I'm going to keep talking just for a minute as I'm working on those links. So after the students created their content, and we did it within Blackboard, because that's the learning management system that our college has, and we have talked about other ways to assist students with, maybe something in using Facebook, or maybe just using an open source wiki. The students were using Blackboard, so they would curate and create their content, and then they would teach their quote-unquote textbook page based on the digital skills that they had acquired. And lastly, when they taught, they would then do the public speaking and the 21st century skills, because they would have to provide the visual cues from their research with their content. And then the content professor, Professor Medrano, would then interject to make sure that the content was fleshed out and balanced. And if he were sitting here, he would definitely tell you that it was very interesting because he learned some new tips and tricks. For example, I think the markets used to close like over on Sunday, but now they're 24/7, and that was something that a student brought to the class. In addition, we had the fall of the government in Egypt, and that was happening and affecting the markets. So as he would say, that those were things that a textbook would be impossible to capture at that time. I'm going to keep moving on, and if we have time at the end, I'll share some of the student comments with you. So I'm going to share just a little bit about the role of the librarian, and it really can't be understated. We help to build the technology infrastructure, in this case, as Candy noted, using Blackboard and the wikis within Blackboard. But we fully recognize there are a tremendous number of platforms that could be used for this type of teaching. We helped in conjunction with Professor Reyes Medrano, we helped to create the overall schedule that revolved around him lecturing the students in teams searching an aspect of that lecture by generating keywords and developing good search statements and evaluating the information they found to determine its credibility, and creating the presentation, and then teaching their peers what they learned with follow-up. So that revolved around a schedule that we hope to create. Of course, we provided intense information literacy instruction. A lot of that was up front in the first few weeks of the class, and it involved some more sophisticated things than normal, like how to embed easy proxy and persistent links so the students could use open access as well as proprietary content in a seamless way. We prepared a research guide, which actually is the ShareSpring LibGuide product that Angela had mentioned, and that was loaded with library and open OER sources that would be relevant for international business, and that was a way to get the students started. We provided a tremendous amount of support both inside and outside the classroom as students and student teams would follow up with us for additional help. And we also surveyed the impact of this approach to teaching across several semesters, and we have some of those results to share with you. We do. When we say support inside and outside, we definitely would have students come and seek us out in the library if they had a glitch. They also would email us via the Blackboard because we were instructors embedded. And in subsequent semesters, there was also a rubric placed in the Blackboard page the first few weeks that I would go in and comment on with regards to their ability to blend both proprietary and open access information on their pages, so that they had a real good foundation in the combination of both. And I'll just note that we explicitly encouraged the use of multimedia content as they constructed their quote-unquote textbook pages in the Blackboard Wiki, so that there was a blend of text, video, imagery that made their presentations more exciting for the rest of the class. Right, and one reason was if you weren't going to read a standard textbook, then don't just make a text-heavy page that your classmates aren't going to be interested in, because one of the things that their Blackboard Wiki page did was it supported the overall content. Students were definitely experts in their one area, but they needed to have the breadth of the overall IBS, the International Business content, and so they could always go back to those wiki pages. So some of our findings I just want to slightly hit on is 100% of them agreed that collaboration was good. I think everybody would probably agree out there that, yeah, any kind of collaboration with faculty is always great with the library. 100% thought that critical thinking and problem solving was encouraged, and that they had better competence in their own research and presentation skills. It was interesting that 70% agreed or strongly agreed that research instruction provided by the librarians assisted in their participation in creating the living textbook. And that has stayed about the same and gone up a little bit depending on, it's one of those kind of catch-22s where the very first time Sheila and I ran through it, we probably were embedded for several weeks. And that has not always been sustainable, which is unfortunate. 95% found the content for this course more engaging than a traditional textbook, and 62% have found textbook costs to be an academic barrier. That rose slightly last year, where economic downturn is nationwide, and a lot of our students, more of our students are searching for a textbook alternative. Some comments that they had was, not having to buy a textbook. In fact, it's really funny because a lot of students will come in the first night, and a couple of them will have bought their textbook, and they think it's so great to be able to go back to the bookstore and get their money back. So they love that. Once again, I shared with the concept of just how international business is affected by what goes on in the world. So one student said if we had had a textbook, it would have been outdated by the time we started, which is so true. And then we do really, Sheila and I have a wonderful relationship. As well as, Professor Medrano is a beloved faculty member on our campus, but it really makes the library's presence much more important when you just interact with students in their classroom. So some of the next steps she was going to share a little bit with you. So this project really did demonstrate the efficacy of blending open and proprietary digital content However, for the librarians in the room and folks familiar with EasyProxy, that little piece of code that you put in front of a persistent link so that it keeps it copyright compliant, that really does become a barrier for scaling up this type of approach. Even in 3-hour workshops that we have done with faculty, it's just a hard thing to remember how to do, and it's clunky. I was doing it myself in a class that I teach online. And yesterday I was battling getting my EasyProxy codes in so that the students would be able to seamlessly access content I wanted them to read. So actually at Sloan, the Sloan 3C conference last summer, where Candy and I did present this project, we also discovered an open source code through a presentation there called Xerxes. And maybe some of you are familiar. The Cal State have done a lot of work in implementing this open source code, and I will very simply say it's a code that enables a library's web scale tool like Discover or Summon to seamlessly communicate with the learning management system like Blackboard or Canvas or Desire to Learn. It eliminates the need for that EasyProxy so that a faculty member, a student, or a librarian can search the library's resources and through a couple of clicks auto-populate that content directly into Blackboard or Canvas and also go back to go the other direction. So we're in the process of exploring the adoption of Xerxes in our district, and this might take a year or so, but this would make the process so much more elegant and allow us to really scale up. I think the other things that we're looking at really is embracing OER as the new cutting edge service center for libraries. We do reference, we do instruction, we do collection development. I think it's time to really embrace our unique perspective and expertise around OER and open access content as a service center where we can add value for our faculty and students, both in helping to identify and find and curate content, but also exploring cutting edge pedagogies like the one we've shared with you today.
All right. Thank you
very much,
Sheila and Candy. Perhaps we'll have some time at the end to show one or two of your videos. Right now we're right on time, but need to go to our next presenter. We did have some wonderful questions, many of which were answered in the chat window, but we will get back to those questions that weren't answered at the end.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce Shireen Deboo, who is a faculty librarian at the South Seattle Community College. And she has been there since 2005 as a community college librarian. And Shireen was commissioned by college administrators to investigate and present a report on college open textbook costs and alternatives back in 2009. She's been active in the OER movement district-wide and statewide since then. And she has presented on OER within her district and at conferences regionally. And I know that she continues to do this. And over the last year, she has been an active participant in the developing of the open course library and integrating information literacy into those courses. Shireen, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me? I had to switch my phone devices.
I can hear you fine.
Great. So thanks for having me. The first question I have for folks is if they don't mind using the raise your hand icon in the chat area. I'm just curious how many of our large crowd are librarians versus faculty members. So maybe you could raise your hand if you are a librarian. That'll give me a little bit of an idea of who we're chatting with, and I'm excited to know how many people there are at all. So I want to start by just letting folks know a little bit about the Open Course Library for those who might not. It is a somewhat imperfect and slightly confusing name given to a statewide project that has a goal of creating 81 college courses online using open access materials. That's the overall goal of the project. The instructors are from community colleges across Washington State, and the courses selected represent the highest enrolled courses statewide at those community colleges. So this has been a two-phase project. Phase 1 was completed sometime last year and did roughly the first 40 or so courses. And we are in the process of wrapping up the second phase of that project. So this project is administered by the State Board for Community Colleges and funded through them and through the Gates Foundation. So that's a little bit about the Open Course Library and its background. There have been librarians involved in this project through both phases. There are some librarians that have been involved in one phase and not the other, and vice versa. Instructors are pulled in specifically for their courses. So for example, a microbiology instructor is responsible for their course, and nutrition instructor might be responsible for that course. But there are other open course library roles that span multiple courses. So the librarians, for example, may be assigned to 5 or 6 or 7, sometimes as many as 8 courses that they're responsible for providing support to. Other support roles in the project include the instructional designer, the accessibility consultant. So the instructional designer essentially reviews the course structure and materials on a much more granular level. And the accessibility consultant looks at universal design issues and accessibility issues. So what is it that the librarians have been doing in this project? Some of the more mundane pieces are around creating and monitoring a course-specific spreadsheet that essentially tracks any item that an instructor has chosen to use that they didn't create themselves. Of course, we're also asking them to cite their own content. So for some courses, this might be a really simple spreadsheet because, for example, there may be a math instructor who created their own textbook or found a textbook that works really well for them, and they list that item and they cite it in MLA format, which is the format that we asked folks to use, and they were good to go. Other courses had hundreds and hundreds of items, all kinds of items. They could have been images, they could have been videos, they could have been articles from a variety of sources or other content. So in some cases it was really tedious to track all of those items. We also asked people to indicate how that item was going to be used and what its permission status was. So I should indicate that while the ultimate goal of the Open Course Library project was to use open access materials as much as possible, for a variety of reasons the administrators were fairly flexible with that and ultimately decided that materials could cost up to, I believe, $35 for a course. And in many cases, instructors did use materials that were not actually fully open access, but were copyrighted materials that they had received permission to use. So in many cases we found ourselves facilitating that process of gathering permissions. Other things we were doing was, of course, helping to find or identify or evaluate open access materials as much as possible, oftentimes pushing those to instructors and suggesting materials that tied in with their course objectives. In a lot of cases we were helping to determine what the copyright status was of various materials that instructors were interested in using. As I mentioned, we were pretty active in documenting and tracking those materials. And then finally what I want to talk a little bit more about is that we were involved in assisting with building and incorporating information literacy components into these courses. So as far as our role in the Open Course Library, as I mentioned, librarians have been involved with the Open Course Library from the first phase onward. However, our role changed between phase 1 and phase 2, and that happened in great part through librarian grumbling and active advocacy. What we found is that while we were pleased to be involved in the first phase of the project, it was pretty clear early on that our role in the first phase was rather passive, and that was in great part because we played a advisory role that was essentially voluntary. So in other words, instructors were invited and offered our services, but there was no mandatory collaboration. There was no checklist. There was no way to ensure that there was a meaningful information literacy component in these projects. And as the librarians in this webinar can certainly relate to, we were really interested in using this statewide project, this high-profile project, to boost the opportunity for more proactive information literacy in courses across the state. As the previous presenters pointed out, that there are roles that students can take that are more proactive. We wanted to create ways for these courses to have some kind of meaningful information literacy component that tied into the courses. So what we did is we basically advocated with the administrators of the project and talked about what we wanted to see in a second phase. And they were open to those suggestions, and thus in the second phase we've really taken on a slightly different role. We have what you would call maybe approval authority. There is a component to the checklist that instructors must complete that indicates that they have worked successfully with librarians and that they have completed some kind of an information literacy component to their course. Of course, we wanted that to be related and relevant and meaningful to that course, and that's going to be different for every course. So just briefly, I wanted to give you an example of how we did that integration. And for anyone who's interested, I'm more than willing to share the Information Literacy Outcomes Assessment Worksheet, which is a form that was created actually through a different project in Washington State. To integrate information literacy across campuses. But basically what we did is we adopted that worksheet and we used it as a template for all of these instructors. Listed here are just 2 examples of those outcomes. I believe there's a total of about 6 information literacy outcomes. Here you'll see 2. One of them is to conduct effective searches using appropriate tools. And the second outcome listed is to analyze content to choose the best information for the need. And that first column basically gives examples of what that skill set looks like. The second column actually shows how this particular open course library course designed exercises that achieve these goals. So you'll see that in week 5 they had an assignment to identify something that changes over time using a graph or other kinds of data, and a week 7 assignment that asks students to find an article describing a recent study. And of course these are related to a math and society course. Other courses may use different outcomes, and we told instructors they didn't need to have an activity for every single outcome. It may be that there's just 1 or 2 outcomes that they had exercises or projects associated with. So part of what we were doing was brainstorming and collaborating with these instructors to find and suggest meaningful, connected information literacy components. So a couple of just general observations and challenges that I wanted to share and point out from our experience as librarians in this project. Of course, for us, I would say that it was very obvious that having a mandatory component really made a difference in terms of being able to successfully incorporate information literacy. I'd love to say that voluntary is always the way to go, but unfortunately, teachers are like every other human being. They'll do what they absolutely must. They're on a crunch and they have limited time. So once this became a mandatory component, we were able to sort of capture the audience a little bit better. We definitely, as I mentioned, we struggled in terms of finding the best materials for every course. Not always easy to do. I think that the open access world is still on a trajectory forward, and there are still places where either consistency, quality, searchability continues to be a challenge. And so that was definitely something that we faced. And as I mentioned, not every course used only open access materials. I would also say that we definitely learned that faculty are very much on a learning curve about copyright issues, and that continues to be a big part of what librarians do, is helping instructors understand that just because you find it on Google doesn't mean it's free to use and legal to use in your courses, that there's a distinction between free and open access. So that is a big part of what we were trying to drill into our experience with instructors, and that's something that I would encourage folks to continue to help draw that distinction between what's free and what's truly open access and copyright free. And I also want to point out something that ties into the previous presentation. It's not all about textbooks, and it's not all about finding the textbook that fits right into your course objectives. It's about an opportunity to make your instruction a proactive experience for students. And whenever possible, we also wanted to ask instructors how they could make their students a part of the process, how they could have students select materials and use those evaluation skills and use those search skills, since in the real world, those are the skills that they're going to need on a regular basis. So I'm going to leave it there. I know we're really close to that 11 o'clock hour, so thanks for your time. And if you don't get a chance to ask questions in the next 4 minutes, you can find me pretty easily online through South Seattle Community College.
All right. Thank you very much, Shireen, for sharing that. And thanks to all of our presenters. A big round of applause for them. Very exciting projects. I wanted to let you know that our next webinar will be March 26th, and it will be on OER authoring tools. OpenStax College is going to join us to talk about some of their new editing tools. BC Campus will be talking about Pressbooks, which is an open source tool that they use. And we'll have SoftChalk talking about their tool in Cloud Repository. Hope you can join us for that. And now I want to open this up to questions, but before I open it up to brand new questions, we did have a number of questions that were kind of stacked up, which I'd like to just take care of those before we go to the new ones. Once again, thank you all for coming today. Librarians really rock. We had almost 120 people here at our peak, and over half of you were librarians. So this is the largest webinar we've had to date, and we're going to invite the librarians every month. So we had a question from Prudence. She was asking, and I think this was pointed at Candy and Sheila, about whether they had any issues with 508 compliance for the videos and images that the students were curating.
So the question was, did we have any privacy?
No, I'm sorry. Sorry, 508 accessibility compliance.
Well, that is a really important question, and we did not address accessibility in this sort of pilot instruction project, although that would be important in the scaling up. And we were fortunate actually that we didn't have, there wasn't a need for that, in the classes that we've had so far. So I appreciate the question though, because that would be an important consideration going into the future.
All right, thanks very much, Sheila. A number of people pointed out how much work was involved in the course, and I think it was Andrea who asked, and if you felt that this curating of information can only be done for one course at a time, or could multiple courses, could searching happen for multiple courses at a time? And I think to some extent Shireen answered that one, but Shireen, or would you like to take a shot at that question?
I'm sorry, can you just recap the question for me?
Okay. So this working with students on this intensive kind of information literacy curating of OER, there was a question of how that would scale beyond a single classroom.
Well, I mean, I think anytime you do a project that asks students to take on that kind of work, obviously as Candy and Sheila's presentation pointed out, there's a fair amount of hand-holding involved. And I think it really helps to have a faculty member that already has some sophistication with the tools and with search skills. But I certainly don't see any reason why it couldn't be scalable. I mean, we all have courses on our campus that have significant research components. So how is this really any different from that, except that the tools are a little bit different and the search interfaces are a little bit different. But if you provide a little bit of background on that, I don't see why it couldn't be scalable. I mean, I'm sure there are other folks that have maybe different thoughts about what some of those challenges are, but that's kind of my initial thought.
Thank you, Shireen. I think that it helped quite a bit. There were some other related questions around this as well. One question I think that came out for Angela, and maybe Angela you could speak just a little bit to this, was about sharing digital textbooks through the library.
Well, the first thing that came to mind is that we actually most recently put Carol Lehman's digital textbook on eReserve. It is an open textbook. It was more open than it is now, actually, because it was a flat world knowledge textbook. And we've actually compromised a little bit, although after Una, you were involved in these discussions, and it's a very long story, but after discussing at length the Creative Commons license for this textbook, we have determined that we do indeed own it. The license sticks with the material, but we put it on eReserve nonetheless, simply to, I guess, protect it a little bit, to protect our ownership of it, and to make it easier for the students to use. Commercial textbooks and reserves, print reserve is very straightforward. We simply put the book on print reserve, but eReserves is still kind of a gray area for commercial textbooks, and I think we have to be more careful with the copyright. If we have the rights to a book and just a link, then I would say, yeah, it's probably okay to put it on eReserve and just provide the link, which will no doubt be proxied or otherwise limited. But if so many publishers protect their textbooks by requiring that it be a single user ownership model, and those, of course, we couldn't really do that legally, I think. Maybe somebody else knows more about that than I do.
Thank you, Angela. And I do think it varies by digital textbook provider, how the usage patterns. So the open access textbooks, we know that those can be freely linked to from the library reserves. Thank you. And if anyone else has any other comments, please do share those. And we're open to taking questions on the phone or through the microphone if you have access to that.
This is Sheila speaking, and I'll just comment a little bit further on the sustainability of the type of instructional approach that Candy and I were involved with. You know, in the first semester or so, because we were sort of making it up as we went along to some extent, it definitely was labor intensive, and some of that was alleviated as, you know, subsequent semesters came along. However, I think, you know, probably that would also be considered in our next steps. There are probably effective ways that we could emulate this sort of process but take some of the onus off of the librarians that are already spread so thin. So for example, maybe doing more faculty workshops just on the approach so that instructors were more empowered to carry some of the more of the weight of the infrastructure of that type of teaching, and also developing progressive interactive tutorials that could perhaps take the place of some of the instruction that we did. I think there are probably effective methods in this day and age that could make a more sustainable approach while still keeping the basic pedagogy intact, where the students are acting as the content curators, which was very engaging for them.
Thank you, Sheila. Angela, there was a question about Carol Lehman's textbook title. If you could share that in the chat window, that would be great. And once again, the contact information for all of our presenters is on the screen right now. So if you don't get your question asked, they are happy to answer follow-up questions. Oh, thank you, Angela. Wonderful. Okay, well, we had a simple question from Teresa. This recorded presentation will be available. It is available from our OER our consortium site, and I'll put the link to that in there. We should have it on, this presentation should be available on YouTube by the end of the week, but it will be posted to our website there, oerconsortium.org. And presenters, once again, I want to thank you. Did you see any other questions in the chat window that you would like to answer, or comments that you would like to respond to?
I may have missed them. I didn't see anything directed at me, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and we had lots of wonderful comments, and I'm taking one last look here at the questions. There was a concern about the time intensiveness of both 508 compliance and also the information literacy and searching, and I think Shireen really spoke to that about having faculty be part of that. Obviously, faculty are responsible for having 508 compliant courses for their students and should be part of that process as well.
I guess I have one comment about the time intensity piece, and maybe folks have different feelings about this, but I think that asking students to be active evaluators, searchers, and users of information is certainly in our district, and I'm assuming in many other districts, a campus-wide learning outcome. And I think it's absolutely appropriate in almost any college course for students not to simply be fed and handed information, but to become active in the process of finding that information and using it effectively. So I guess that's going to be my sort of stock answer to the point of it's an intensive effort. Yeah, it's intensive for the student, and I don't really have a problem with that.
Okay, and I'd like to piggyback on that. This is Sheila again. I agree completely, and I think sometimes, maybe not sometimes, but we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that digital and open and all this makes things necessarily, I don't know, what's the word, easier? I mean, I think actually it has the potential, if we're willing to step into it, to make things more engaging, but we all know engaging instruction is more time consuming. And so I think that the two go hand in hand. I also noticed a question from Stephen asking if there were any faculty who argued that or had concerns asking students to gather their own content would be misguided. And I have to say, up until this point, we have not heard any feedback like that. Of course, let's not be fooled that it's the instructor of record who is guiding every aspect of that course. And his feedback and weigh-in, he would definitely complement what the students were curating to ensure that there were no gaps. Another thing is this type of approach, it wouldn't necessarily have to replace an entire textbook. You know, someone could do this even with just part of the content for a course, where the students would then become the curators working together.
Thank you very much for that, Sheila. I strongly agree with your sentiments as well, that students should not be passive recipients of information. It's a different world. So with that, I think we've gone 10 minutes over, and I don't want to keep our presenters any longer. And I want to thank once again everyone who attended today. Please do follow up with us if we can provide additional information. And at this point, I am going to bring the webinar to a close. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Una.
Thank you.